Life extension makes absolutely no sense if we can't solve the problem of the decay of our brains.
And Henry, doctors spend their professional careers trying to stop people dying or trying not to let disease win. You've had a long career in this business. Do you feel that science has changed this, the odds radically?
In neurosurgery, there are many. We often keep people alive who are better off dead with severe brain damage. I mean, it's a very, very complicated balance. And we over-treat. Well, there's no question of that, but it's very difficult not to. As I said earlier, you can't predict what science might turn up. From the genetic point of view, we do need to bear in mind that genetics are incredibly complicated. I mean, even eye color, which we're taught at school is genetically determined, is controlled by at least 7 different genes working together. And even when you know all that, you can still only predict with 70% accuracy what the eye color will be. Schizophrenia, at least 100 genes are involved in. So it's very unlikely there's any simple genetic hack, master gene, which will somehow slow down aging. But I just finished. But the other point, it seems to me, it does not make sense to try to prolong life without our being able to fix Alzheimer's and dementia. And when I try to see the good side of my having advanced cancer, I think, well, at least I won't have to live long enough to become demented. It sounds like a joke, but it's extremely serious.
Yes.
By the age of 80, we have about a 40% probability of dementing. And even this latest wonder drug achieves pretty trivial
slowdown
improvements. Yes. So, I mean, what's the point of living to 1500 if we're all demented? Yes, you can say, yeah, well, you never know what science. My point is, yes, it might, spending lots of money on this research might produce results, but I think they're much more important things to spend money on.
Anders, I wanted to come back.
Yeah, so I completely agree with what you're saying, except that trying to fix why we're aging fundamentally, yeah, that's super hard. That would mean remodeling our entire metabolism, and we're not doing that this century, probably. But what you want to do is fix the aging damage, and that might be a bottleneck where we actually can do interventions that doesn't require a lot of super complicated stuff.
No, I agree with that. I accept that.
Yeah, cool. We agree on that at least. And I do agree that, yeah, we should totally fix dementia too. There is so many other things we need to fix to make a long life worth living.
But it's still, I mean, in terms of limited resources, I still think it's more important.
But isn't it great in that case if it's the private money rather than the public money going for the life extension? No, I think it's bad
that there's such vast sums of private money being accumulated by these billionaires and oligarchs.
But
I think that's terrible.
It always has been rich people who've been trying to, who imagine that the last frontier, they can buy
suppose the
immortality.
NHS instead spent the money and said, we're going to try to slow down the aging of the British citizens. That's going to save a lot of taxpayer money by reducing a lot of aging.
Pigs will fly.
But then they'll make me work till I'm like 85.
Yes.
Like, I'm never getting out of the NHS.
Exactly.
I've done a shift.
Most of us would say NHS doing this would be a really weird thing, both politically and in practice. And many would say, actually, shouldn't you be spending the money on the fractures and the midwifery? So, yeah, there is actually a benefit that Jeff is spending the money on that rather than golf courses.
But if this research
because notice that most billionaires, the billionaires we don't hack on, they're spending it on nice fancy mansions and yachts. People love talking about Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos because they're building rockets and trying to cure aging. And oh, heavens forbid, Bill Gates is trying to cure malaria. What a wicked man. We tend to go for them because they're doing something in the world.
Bill Gates is not spending money, as far as I know, on aging research, is he?
No, he's spending money on malaria.
Isn't there an important point as well? Are they selling us the idea of youth, which sells, right? You know, we put our creams, we put our whatever, you know, the gym memberships. That's not about always being healthy, that's about feeling young. So are we saying we're aging people and they feel young? You know, I fully sign up to that. Are we aging people that feel old but look young, which is a really different thing because, you know, your Botox is a metabolic poison. So you're actually killing the cells that you're pretending are looking younger. So And it all comes down to, let's get into feminism now, but essentially a lot of it is being sold so that women feel bad about themselves and look in the mirror and feel bad about themselves. We pay over some money to some guy that's developing some fake,
anti-aging cream.
Absolutely, but they're selling immortality, but actually it's
well,
all
we're
of
not
this.
even selling
all
immortality.
of this is looking. Well, that's they're selling youth, they're selling nubile and prepubescent, and that's what people are buying into. But it's all about, we're looking for happiness in completely the wrong places.
But to pick up on Anders' point, that if extremely rich people choose to invest in extending life in this way, that's not actually damaging the rest of humanity, presuming that it will in the end
do
be
we know that?
democratized.
It is if they were charged very high taxes and the money was spent elsewhere.
And you have a two-tier even more so. You have the divide between the rich and the poor. So the rich die, later and longer and allegedly happier, and the poor die quicker.
That happen, because at least in Western democracies, people say we could save so much money at the NHS if people are aging more slowly. We're totally going to buy Bezos' method. Now, the problem is, of course, if that life extension involves a lot of services, you need a lot of doctors and nurses to massage your telomeres and do other clever things, then it might be so expensive that it's going to be very hard to subsidize. If it's small molecules, then once the patent runs out, it's very cheap. The idea that, it's always going to be super expensive, that's a bit like saying, cell phones, that's only going to be the realm for the millionaires. And what happened was instead, of course, that, we got the luxury ones, and now it's in more or less everybody's hand, and they're actually having the most transformative effect in the developing countries. So we want to avoid them to be maybe tricked and linked to a lot of complicated services. But I do think that we would have a tendency to spread, because the way to become a trillionaire is, of course, to be the one who has a patent of life extension. Then you can start spending money for some really weird things. But
we go back to, does that bring happiness? Can you name a trillionaire? Well, I can't name any, but can you name one that is happy?
Yeah, I personally know a billionaire who is nice, friendly, dances rather well.
And single? No, I didn't say that.
No, he's not single.
Could you please give Anna his phone
I
number?
wish I was a better person.
I'm sorry, he's married. And he actually also recently became a grandfather, but he's happy. It's interesting because I think there is some truth to this. Are billionaires happy? And the obvious answer is, they're happier than the poor people, but no, they have their own problems, and money doesn't bring you happiness. A long life doesn't bring you necessarily happiness. I also don't think it brings you unhappiness. You need to do something with it, and that is meaning.
There is so much research showing that human happiness beyond a certain minimum income is socially determined. It's your sense of meaning and purpose, your social life, your family. That's what brings happiness.
Well, and that takes us neatly to our third question, which is, if we can imagine a world without death, would it be desirable? Would it be a good thing?
I'm still at work.
You're still at work.
Yeah. My first ever job was in a nursing home, and I was 16. And nursing home work, I would say, and I've worked across the world in many different contexts, I would say is one of the toughest gigs about it. It's really, really thankless. And I worked in a nursing home that, unless you paid the extra premium, we didn't change your sheets throughout the night. So whatever you did in the bed through the night, through dementia, as we've talked about, through incapacity, people were left in them unless they paid the premium. And I did put a complaint in. It was my first ever job as a 16-year-old, and I put a formal complaint into my local council about the nursing home and never got asked back. But
what a surprise.
What a surprise. So we have to look at the quality of life. As a 16-year-old, I'd like to think I was naive and innocent and going into this job because I thought, I'd be helping people shave and be clean and have dignity. Because we talked about dignity earlier. What is life without dignity? We all deserve dignity regardless of where we are on that lifespan. And it was a very sharp shock into that many hundreds of thousands of people in this country live a very undignified life in care homes that are unsubsidised. We've all got to fight for the NHS, we've got to fight for our social services, which is completely going down the pan at the moment. So unless we're going to sort out these really fundamental systems of where are we looking after these people, us, maybe, probably not, maybe my kid, for their longevity of life, we're not getting it right now. So how on earth can we care and give dignified lifestyles to people if we're increasing that population and decreasing the workforce? It's a completely impossible.
Well, I spent 5 months working as a nursing assistant in a psychogeriatric ward in a long-term mental hospital in the south of London, and it's an education. It really is. So life extension makes absolutely no sense if we can't solve the problem of the decay of our brains. Yeah, sure, maybe the wonderful magical research will find a solution to that, but I think that's, at the moment, one never knows, one can't predict. But if you could suddenly get everybody living a lot longer, they still have to die from something.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.